Okay, you voted for it. Here it is, the 5-inch 6S slammed ImpulseRC Alien FPV Freestyle quad. First thing I want to do is just go over the components that we're going to be using. So let's start right up top here with the frame. So we have one of the top plates. For this build, we're going to require two. You'll see why later. We've got some components, some battery straps, some heat shrink and an XT60, as well as some zip ties, the battery pad, and some wires. We've got all of the red hardware and standoffs that we will not be using. And we've got this long piece, which is also the frame. Here we have the power distribution board. That will not get used. Okay, so let's just go over this. We have the 4 arms for the frame. We have one of the top plates. We have the other top plate. We have the bottom plate. We have the camera side plates, the back plate for the camera, and that's the frame. So let's get that out of the way here. Again, we have some battery straps and the battery pad right here. Set that back there. These battery straps, got a little vibration dampening pad here. And we're gonna get these flight test battery straps out of the way for now. I'm going to leave the hardware in its little bags for right this moment. And for this stuff, we've got the wire, we've got some heat shrink, and we'll get that out of the way for now too. Okay, moving right along. Over here we have the Team Black Sheep Crossfire Nano SE. This is the one that comes with the Immortal T antenna inside of it, so let's go ahead and get that open right now. There's some wire, there's the receiver, and here is the Immortal T. Here are some. Okay. Right here we have the TBS Unify Pro V3. This is a 5.8 gigahertz video transmitter. It will go from 25 milliwatts all the way up to 800 milliwatts, 40 channels. Here we have some titanium hardware. They're just some M2.5 screws. These ones are 10 millimeters long, and these ones are 8 millimeters long. That will help out for the frame, and it's much stronger than the hardware that comes with the frame. Okay, here we have standoffs, and they are aluminum, and what we've got is we're going to need several of these. So these are what we're going to slam the frame down to. They're 15 millimeters. So we're just going to set those aside here. And these are the other end of them. And they are 10 millimeters. And we're going to need those as well. As always, guys, you'll find links to all of the parts needed to make this exact build down in the description. So here we have the AXI 3D printed antenna mount. Let's go ahead and open that. All right, here we have some capacitors. These are all 35 volt. We have 1000 and we have 330 microfarad. Here we just have 4 anti-vibration standoffs for the flight controller. The Luminaire AXI stubby antenna. Go ahead and get that out of its package. Here we have a Hero TPU printed mount. Not sure if I'll use this one or not. I really like the color of this session mount and the resolution at which it was printed. This was printed by Brent at BMC 3D, and man, the quality of this print, it's just fantastic, and the thing is super durable. Super quality print right here. Okay, we have a black XT60, and we have some also purple Immortal T holders. And we have the 2 green standoffs that I'm going to use at the front of this. Here we have some purple zip ties. Here we have some duct tape. It's this multicolor kind of 80s, 90s, looks sweet. Here for the camera we have the RunCam Rotor Riot edition. Let's go ahead and get that out of the box. Set it right back here. There we go. All right, coming towards the end here, we have the ImpulseRC. This is the Mr. Steel PDB. It has the OSD integrated into it. I really like this thing. I used this in one other build. It was the Kinetic Aerial Vector, and I'll link to that right up top here. That's a great, great quad. If you haven't seen that video, check it out. Here we have the KISS V2 flight controller. And here we have 4 of the KISS 35 amp ESCs. And we have the Stick It Skins half wrap from stickitskins.com. This thing's going to be pretty sweet, and it definitely goes along with the color theme. And for the motors, we're using the T-Motor F40 Pro 2 1600 kVs. Just go ahead and get these out of here right now. Here we go. There we go. So here they are. Low kV, because we're running 6S. Should be nice. I think that's it, guys. Oh, here we go. For the Sharpies, these are just your oil pens, and I'm going to do the edges of the frame in all different colors to really just kind of keep with the theme and make this a very colorful quad. Okay guys, now we're going to color the frame. These are paint pens, so you want to shake them up a little bit. First time you open the paint pen, if you've never used one before, you're going to have the white tip. It will have never had any paint down to the tip yet. So you need to just press it in, and that will allow the paint to come down to the tip. It takes a couple seconds. I'm going to go with different colors for different arms, so you're going to want to try and keep it on the sides. A Q-tip or a cotton ball with some rubbing alcohol will take it off. So I mean, if you're unable to keep it on the sides, then that's fine. You can get it off later. So I'm just going to speed this part up. Again, like I said, I'm just going to use the pens and color different pieces of the frame. See you guys in a minute. Okay guys, so we have all of the pieces of the carbon painted and it's set to the side and drying now. So I'll show you that here shortly. But while we're waiting on that to dry, let's go ahead and get all of the electronics out and get them all tinned up and ready to be soldered. Alright, we're going to start by getting the ESCs all tinned up and ready to go. So the solder that I'm using here is a 6040 rosin core high grade solder. You can see here. I will again put a link to this down in the description. 2 of the ESCs are going to need to be reversed. You're going to do that by just soldering this little jumper here. So we'll go ahead and do that on 2 of them now. Okay, there's one of them. All right, there is the first ESC all tinned up, ready to go. All right guys, so that concludes the ESCs. They are now all tinned up, ready to go. We've got 2 of them with the direction reversed. Okay, moving on to the Mr. Steel PDB. The first thing that we are going to do is the capacitor and the power connector. That should do that, guys. Let's move on to the rest. And I am just going to tin every pad. It'll make it easier later. We might not use every single pad, but I'm going to tin them all. Notice that I get the pad hot and then just feed the solder onto it, and it will pull it and melt it onto the pad. So right here on the power distribution board, we've got jumpers. We've got a 5 volt and 7 volt. We're going to go ahead and jump it over to the 5 volt. And the way we're going to do that is just by taking the outside. There we go. And now we've just set this up to have 5 volt output. One thing I will say, guys, and I believe that they addressed this in a version 2 of this board, of this power distribution board. However, I still believe I have the first one. These pads are not very strong, so you're definitely going to want to make sure that you have a little extra slack so that if you do get into a crash, you're not going to pull on the pad. Okay guys, so as you can see right there, we've got the power distribution board and it is all tinned up and ready to go. I've got the heat shrink around here now. Before I shrink this, I'm going to put some goop in here. It's going to make a little bit of a mess, but it's going to help really seal it up. Okay, that's exactly what I expected to happen. Now before it runs all the way down, I'm going to grab it really quick. It is a little warm. And if you get your finger wet, the goop will not stick to your finger. And now you can take this and kind of just put it up and around. You can wipe off some of it. Okay, so now you can see how that is. And I know you might be saying, well, that's not necessary. No, not 100%. But what it's going to do is it's going to prevent the capacitor terminals from touching each other. It's going to waterproof that down there. And just keeps everything nice and tight together. Once this is all done, we will cut the shrink wrap away from the XT60 so that we'll be able to use it. But that's it for the PDB right there. The only thing I'm going to do now is take this and coat the bottom of it with liquid black tape. Okay, so as you can see here, I'm just taking this shish kebab skewer and putting it through the holes so that it doesn't dry and fill the holes, because what will happen then is you'll have to pull it out, and then when you go to pull off the stuff that got in the hole, it'll peel off all the rest of it once it dries. Okay, there you have it. With all of the holes cleared out, we have this part done. So now with this, I'm just going to take it and set it upside down, set it to the side, and it needs some time to dry. All right, the last thing we got to do here for the initial part of the electronics is to tin up the KISS V2 flight controller. And believe it or not, that's it. That's all we have to tin. We're going to be using these ports for the Crossfire receiver, and we're going to be using TX5 for the smart audio. So that's it. Okay guys, for the next part we are going to assemble the bottom part of the frame. But as you can see here, we've got some of the paint on the arms, which reminds me, I didn't show you the arms. Take a look at that. See, we got a little paint up there, but look how shiny that blue is. It's nice. Same with the green. Purple. Pink. And then for the bottom plate, I did blue and green, pink and purple. Alright, so let's clean the carbon up a little bit. So what we're going to do here, we're just going to get a Q-tip, some rubbing alcohol, and take it on it. And just be careful not to get it on the side, because you don't want to take off the good paint. Okay, so there's that arm, all clean. Let's do the rest really quick, speed this up. Okay guys, so before we can actually put this thing together, we need to put the press nuts into the Mr. Steel PDB. If you haven't done this before, the press nuts go into the Mr. Steel PDB from the top going down. Then you take the special M2.5. It's a steel screw and a washer, and you put that in from the bottom. And then what you do here is you cinch it down, and you'll notice as I screw this, it pulls the press nut down into the PDB. And you'll know when it's done because you won't be able to go anymore. Then you just give it a quick twist and it'll back itself out. Take out the thing, and now you've got one of the press nuts in. So we're going to do this 7 more times, and then we'll have this finished. There it is. There is the Mr. Steel PDB with all of the press nuts in it, and it is ready to go. So as you can see there, all we need to do now is just get the little insulator pad, which we really don't need because I put the liquid tape on there. That's more of just a secondary precaution, but why not? So we'll put the little insulator pad on here. We will get this all set up on here, put the legs on it, and get the bottom part of the frame built so that we can begin to solder everything together. Okay, now we're going to need some of the hardware. And we're just going to cut open the bottom bag. This has the hardware that we're going to need for putting the initial part of the frame together. Okay, now this part can be kind of tricky, so you just want to hold it a little. I've got it sandwiched together, and now I'm just going to kind of slowly take this and work it in until I feel it start to go into one of the press nuts on the PDB, which it's doing right now. You can see that going in. And then just get it going so we can get all 4 going in. We're just going to get this to where it's going to hold the arms in place. Okay. So now I can flip this over, and we can see here that we now have the PDB on the frame. So it's really starting to come together. But now what we need to do is take these other ones and put them through the outside. Okay, we've almost got all of the screws in. What I'm doing now is I'm putting in the last 4 long ones where the flight controller is going to go. I have not yet cinched down the ones that are holding the PDB together. Just going to look at the arms, everything's good, and now I'm going to cinch it down. I don't want to strip it out again, but cinch it down nice and tight. Good. Move to the opposite side. Good. Good. To the center now. Okay, and now for the anti-vibration standoffs, I'm going to do it slightly different. I'm going to hold it on the front, and I'm just going to tighten it just a little in the back. There we go, on each one. Okay guys, so we're going to move on to the next part now, which is going to be getting the ESCs all soldered up and the flight controller. So I'm just going to start right here with this side and just solder them on. Okay guys, so now we've got all of the wires soldered onto the PDB. You can see that I've actually shortened them a little bit. I found that the length that I had the main leads at was just going to end up being a little too long. So now the ESC will sit there, motor will sit here, and we'll have about equal length of wire from the PDB to the ESC and from the motor to the ESC. So it'll work out nicely. So all I'm going to do now is strip the end of these wires a little bit, tin them, and then get the ESC set into place, and we will get that soldered on. Okay, so you can see here, I've got this ESC all soldered up, and they just line up, all of the wires. So I'm going to go ahead and get the other ESCs soldered on, and then we will clean up the frame just a little bit from the flux that has gotten onto it. It's pretty sticky. And after that, we will move on to insulating the ESCs. We're going to put a little bit pad underneath it so that it doesn't come in contact with the carbon. After that, we may put a little piece of heat shrink over the ESCs and slide it back, solder on the motors, pull that heat shrink back over the ESC, shrink it all up, and do that times 4. After that, we will move on to the flight controller. So again, guys, there's one of the ESCs. I will see you in a moment. Okay, guys, so as you can see here, I've got all 4 of the ESCs soldered to the PDB. It's all looking really, really nice, tidy. And what we're going to do now is take a little bit of rubbing alcohol and a toothbrush, and we're going to clean up the flux that kind of got everywhere. So what I'm doing now is I'm just putting this paper towel underneath the ESC so that we can use a little rubbing alcohol on the flux to get it off and not have the rubbing alcohol go through onto the paint. There we go. You see how clean that is now? With that all cleaned up, we're going to take this foam insulator pad that came with the frame, and we're going to just cut that into 4 sections and place it underneath each one of the ESCs. It's got adhesive on one side of it, so this will work out very nicely. Okay, now that we have the insulation underneath the ESCs, I'm going to take just a little piece of shrink wrap here, and I'm going to place it over the arm and the ESC and just slide it back out of the way. And what this is going to do is this is going to help us later to secure the ESCs down. So the next thing that we're going to do here is put the motors on. For this, we're going to use a tiny bit of blue thread locker. All right, so now we have the motors mounted to the frame. I am going to cut the wires to the appropriate length, leaving just a tiny bit of slack, and then I will tin them and get them soldered up. So there you have it. We have soldered up this motor to the ESC. We've got just a little bit of slack in there, which I really like. That way, in case the unfortunate event of a crash, there's just a little bit of wires between the motor and the ESC. Now we're going to go ahead and get the others done, and then we're going to shrink wrap it. So I will see you guys in just a moment. As you can see here, I have all 4 motors soldered on. So what we're going to do now is we are going to just slide this little piece of heat shrink up over the ESC. And then we're going to get the heat gun out and we're going to shrink it into place. So I will see you guys in just a second. We're going to get that done. There it is. ESCs have all been shrink wrapped. Everything is ready to go. So now we are going to move on to the flight controller. And the first thing I'm going to do with the flight controller is take the round diamond file that came with it and make these holes just a little bit bigger, very carefully, as I have decided actually to take the anti-vibration standoffs out of the mix and use the ones that came with it, the regular nylon standoffs. The reason for that is they're slightly shorter, so I'm going to use the nylon standoffs along with these little rubber O-rings. So I'll go ahead and put one of those on each one of there now. And what this is going to do is this is going to allow the flight controller to sit as low as possible to the PDB allowing us to have the frame from bottom to top, or top to bottom, be no more than 15 millimeters. So the other ones were just too tall. So again, I'm going to make this through here and make these holes slightly larger than they are, and I'll be right back. Moving on to the next part, we are going to solder on the leads for the video transmitter and the camera onto the Mr. Steel PDB. The way we want this to go is we want to feed the video transmitter line out the back here. So over here on one side, sorry, I keep twisting this around, we have ground, power, audio, and out. Well, again, we're going to be using smart audio, so we're not going to connect the audio. Okay, so now we have the cable for the video transmitter connected, and probably going to take it right out the side just like this, because we're going to have to actually maybe just like that, because what we do need is room for the two KISS cables to plug in. So I'm just going to go ahead and take those now, plug them in. The only thing left to do now is the camera. Okay, so here we have in, 5 volt, and ground. That's pretty self-explanatory, I think. And that's the camera connector. So now we have the video transmitter cable going back to the back with the white one for smart audio. We have the one coming up to the front. So now all that we have to do is go ahead and solder on the smart audio. Now we're going to connect these two ports to the board. Now it's very important that you get them correctly. Port 1 on the Mr. Steel PDB, or this one right here, needs to go to the PDB port on the bottom of the KISS flight controller. So if we look closely, this side right here says PDB, and this side right here says serial 1. So we want port 1 to go to PDB. So we're just going to go ahead and connect that right now. And it's very important you get these right. Getting them wrong will damage the flight controller. So there's the flight controller mounted. We have that going the way we want it to. Now, one thing that you may have noticed was that I did take off the heat shrink from the ESCs. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, I wanted to put on the stick-it skins on the bottom of this frame. But two, they weren't actually holding it very well. While we've got this here, we're going to put the stick-it skins on. All right, guys, so let's take a look at what we've got so far, okay? There we go. We've got the camera on there. We've got the cable going back to it. I put a little zip tie down there just to hold it in place, but yet it still has plenty of room to move. We've got this all secured and in place. We have the Immortal T on there, and then the antenna piece is right over here, UFL connector. Once I put on the Crossfire receiver, I'm going to stick that probably right back in here, maybe up to the top of it, but that'll be back over here, and that'll connect to the UFL. The Unify Pro is going to come and connect right back there. Now we just need to connect the smart audio cable. That's going to go right here, like I said, to TX5, which conveniently is located right there on the top of the board. So I'm just going to cut that. There we go. I'm just going to press this little wire right down onto TX5 for smart audio. There's that. That should do nicely. Okay. I think really the only thing left to do is the crossfire, which is just right here. Once we get the crossfire on, I think we're finished. Okay. So if we're looking at it like this, the square is going to go to the RX telemetry. The next one over is going to the V port. The next one over is going to the 5 volt, and this one is going to be for the ground. So if we're looking at it closely, you can actually see port 2 is going to go to the RX telemetry, port 1 is going to the V port, 5 volt is labeled 5 volt, and ground is labeled ground. I'm going to heat shrink this real quick here. That's it. There you have it. We have the Immortal T up front, we've got the camera, we've got the crossfire here, we've got the smart audio going to TX5, we have the Unify Pro coming out here to the Axie with the Axie holder. We have the Stick-It skins on the bottom. We've painted the whole thing. One thing that we do need to do now is go ahead and put on the first plate. So let's get that done really quick here. There it is, the 6S drop deck slammed ImpulseRC 5-inch alien that has been just kind of color bombed, if you will. After this, the only thing left to do is to do a smoke test and hook this thing up to the computer, get it all registered in the KISS software, and then maiden this. Guys, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you found it educational, entertaining, or just simply fun to watch, let me know by leaving a comment down below. Consider giving me a thumbs up and subscribing if you're not already, and I'll see you guys next time.